of all, I want to thank everyone who made this event happen today. And I'm very honored to be among the speakers today, and very glad to share some of my insights on storytelling from the perspective of a communications professor with a specialty in rhetoric. My name is Dr. Fay, for those of you who don't know me, Isabel Fay. And so as a communication studies professor, I yearly teach a persuasion class. And my students, smart as they are, often ask me, but who can persuade someone anymore? In our polarized world, persuasion doesn't work. And this observation is both true and false. If you think of persuasion as a use of rational arguments backed up by factual, well-researched evidence, my students are right on. As astonishing as it is to us academics who base our teaching on the premises of reasoned discourse, argumentation is just not hitting the mark these days. But persuasion is much broader than argumentation. In fact, persuasion is at work all the time, and we often don't see its magic force. Because we live in worlds that we have been persuaded to enter. And then those worlds is all we see. And these worlds, call them bubbles, call them echo chambers, whatever, these worlds are made of fundamental stories, narratives, myths, that tell us who are the victims, who are the saviors, and who are the bad guys. They tell us who to trust, who to pray to, what to strive for, what to fight for, what to die for. On February 22nd, 2024, something truly horrific happened on the campus of my alma mater, the University of Georgia. A 22-year-old woman was found dead after jogging near Lake Herrick on UGA's campus. The evidence of her death points to the murder by a man named José Antonio Ibarra. He is an undocumented immigrant from Venezuela. The name of the victim, Laken Riley. You've probably heard this story because it draws on our worst fears. If you are a jogger, if you are a female jogger, this is the horror scenario that haunts your thoughts. Riley was the age of my students. I was just a bit older than Riley when I lived in Athens, Georgia, and regularly jogged around that very same lake. You've likely also heard the story because it nourishes the worlds that a large number of Americans inhabit. Worlds that consist of views of immigrants as criminals, as dangerous, as rapists, as gang members, as murderers. Narratives with clear victims, clear heroes, and clear villains. Here, I am quoting Senator Katie Britt in her response to former President Biden's 2024 State of the Union. She was brutally murdered by one of the millions of illegal border crossers President Biden chose to release into our homeland. Y'all, as a mom, I can't quit thinking about this. I mean, this could have been my daughter. This could have been yours. The villains are the, quote, millions of illegal border crossers who are swiftly equated with the rapists. And of course, former President Biden. The victims, white women, and the heroes are the judges who put Ibarra behind bars, and the legislators and presidential candidates who demand that we deport all, quote, barbarian illegal aliens, rapists, animals. For many people who live in this dangerous world, invaded by dangerous aliens, no traditional argumentation has made a difference. It has been reported again and again and again that immigrants are less likely to commit crimes, than native-born Americans. Stanford University studies find that immigrants are 60% less likely to commit crimes than native-born Americans. Researchers at the Cato Institute, a libertarian think tank, found that undocumented immigrants in Texas were 37% less likely to be convicted of a crime. Recent investigations by the New York Times and the Marshall Project found that there was no link between undocumented immigrants and a rise in violent or property crimes in those communities. Over and over. Overwhelming evidence. Case closed, right? Hardly. There is no way to reach people who have accepted that immigrants threaten the safety of our community. So my students have a point. But also, persuasion is much broader than argumentation, and as you can see, it is the story, whose persuasive power is stronger than any well-researched facts. Stories are persuasive because they invite identification with the protagonist, empathy for the protagonist, and they invite action alongside the protagonist. The news story about Laken Riley made many Americans identify with Riley, feel fear, and fight alongside Trump. But what a critical media consumer and a rhetorical critic would likely ask is this: why is this the story that makes headlines? Why was this, in the end, a story about an illegal immigrant murderer and not, for example, a Me Too story? And what is more, why don't we hear the stories of all the other Josés and Antonios, Rosalindas and Gabrielas, Guillermos and Luises, who are here to work really hard to build a future for their children, to build the American dream? It is the persuasive power of the story that can make monsters out of the most vulnerable members of our communities. And here I'm speaking not just as a rhetorician, not even as an immigrant. I'm speaking as a German citizen who was taught to learn from our past. Why don't we hear the stories of the Rosalindas and the Josés and the Antonios? Why don't they tell their stories? Oftentimes, they don't speak well enough English. Sometimes, they don't even know how to write. And also because increasingly in this society, they risk everything that they have already risked everything for, just to make a point. So simply, why don't we hear their stories? Because they are denied a voice with which to tell their stories. Thank you.